quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
In the studio with us today, Chad Jeffers. This came along from one of our guys here that helps us out quite a bit. Jim Tenenbaugh said, hey, you got to get this guy on the show. And I said, well, sure, let me get his bio. And then I went, wow, you got a cool bio. Let me run down that real quick. You were born and raised in East Tennessee, started playing drums at the age of 8, moved to Nashville, attended Belmont University with a double major in music business and marketing. Interned at Starstruck, which if anybody knows who Reba McEntire is, that's her place. You worked on becoming a songwriter, worked with the Wilkinsons. I remember them. They were pretty big, in the 90s, I think it was, late 90s?
Late 90s, yeah.
Worked with the Wilkinsons as their Dobro and acoustic guitarist. And then you founded the band, and I remember Pinmonkey. I always wonder what happened to him, and now I'm sitting across the table with one of them. You signed a deal with RCA, and you went on to get a hit single with Barbed Wire and Roses, which reached number 25 on the charts. That's pretty outstanding in itself. You've gone on to perform at Live 8, which I hope we can talk about here. You've appeared on the Grammys, the CMAs, the AMAs, and have toured everywhere from Afghanistan to Japan. You've worked with such artists as Keith Urban, Kenny Loggins, Jamie O'Neill, among many others. And then you started touring with Carrie Underwood in 2007. We're going to talk about that a little bit, too. But then you also became an author with your first book, Notes for the Successful Musician, which led to a speaking career. We're definitely going to talk about that. You're also an adjunct professor at Belmont, along with releasing a course called BackStage Notes, an introduction into the careers of music. And yeah, let's not forget the other thing. You're also a record producer. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So did you do all this in one day, or,
Yeah, last week I did it all, just...
You grew up in a musical family, or?
I did, yeah. So my dad was a singer-songwriter, and my late father, it was all kind of a hobby for him. However, he did come to Nashville quite a bit, right, and got a song recorded by Conway and Loretta that's still in the can.
Wow.
Which is amazing. And Conway was actually going to produce him at one point, but he never did. But we have all these amazing demos with Conway's band, the Twitty Birds. So John Huey and all those guys playing all over it. And it's just, it's magical.
Is that what inspired you, or did you know as a young kid? I mean, you were playing drums at 8. Mm-hmm. Was that something you just wanted to do from the very beginning of your life? Or?
Yeah, well, Dad was for sure a big role model. As he would be practicing for, gigs just around the Kingsport area, Kingsport, Tennessee, where I grew up, I would be beating on pots and pans and everything else. And finally, he just said, we got to get a drum set. So we got a drum set. And then my brother started playing with us. Yeah. And so my dad had a gig coming up in front of 1,500 Rainbow Girls. So Rainbow Girls is like a junior league, like they're 13 to 18 years of age.
Right.
And so we were the last people on their program. And when we finished, I'm 8, my brother's 11. They chased us into the dressing room. So we're literally like running, like the Beatles,
wow,
kind of thing. So we run into the dressing room, slam the door, and we're like...
And they were chasing you in a good way.
Yeah. But we were like looking at each other like, I don't know what that was, but that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Yeah. And from that moment, my dad was great. It was just nurturing us. And then eventually a guy named Matt Mahaffey joined in with us with our little family band. And what's amazing is I'm a professional musician. My brother is. My brother plays for Joe Nichols. And then Matt Mahaffey is a professional. He's been with Beck and produced Pink and on the Shrek albums and the Expedia.com. That's him. And so, he's...
There's his biggest claim to fame.
Now,
yeah.
Well, actually now his biggest claim to fame is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all the music for the Nickelodeon show. So he's
it's not a bad gig.
Knocking it out of the park.
Not a bad gig. You went to Belmont, and during that time, you wound up interning at Starstruck.
Right.
Was that part of the college curriculum that got you? Did you get to pick that you wanted to go to Starstruck, or did it just kind of fall into place?
It was actually kind of a summer job that came available, and I went to interview for it, and I was there for 2 years, for the last 2 years of my college career. And it was amazing, is whenever she moved, everything, if you're in the Nashville area, from the fairgrounds to her big building on 40 Music Square West. I mean, that's where Starstruck Studios is, and at the time
and it's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah.
They lease it out. It's not all Stars. I mean, it's all Starstruck, like Starstruck Studios, but they lease out the place. But right now, at the time, she had like everything in-house. So publishing, promotion, management, booking, PR, like everything was in-house. And like it was the best of the best. And so I got to be in the mailroom guy. You're everybody's best friend.
Right.
Because they're like, hey, this package has got to get there by tomorrow. Can you do it? And you're the kind of the hero. And so, it was the best thing ever. And even to this day, I still run into all those people, and it's awesome. And one day, actually, I went to the Cliff Williamson, or the COO, and I said, hey, man, you guys do these meetings once a month, like an employee, and you guys are in the music business, but you don't have any music. Would you mind if I brought my Dobro and did something? He goes, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, come and do it. So I went in one day and played Dobro, and it was just amazing. From that moment, people kind of treated me a little bit, not just as the mailroom guy, but, hey, man, what's going on through music? So it was really a cool experience for me to be in that environment.
And Pinmonkeys came after this, right?
So Pinmonkey was after the Wilkinsons. So when I graduated college, I'm thinking, I'm playing Dobro, and, Dobro's not your everyday kind of instrument. And so, when I was graduating, I had nothing planned. I mean, I'm just like, okay, I'm doing music. I'm still working at Starstruck. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm thinking, did I major in a minor instrument? I was in the music business program, so this is not a school thing. But I'm just thinking, did I work my whole life toward an instrument that really is not that needed? And it was soon after that I got a call from Bill Simmons at Fitzgerald Hartley. And he just said, hey, Doug Johnson, who's the producer of one of his acts, he said, he heard you playing in another band. And he says, you're the guy. So can you come and do the fanfare with the Wilks? And I said, sure. And so then that was the start of it. I did that in the summer. And then in the fall, they got on the Alan Jackson tour. So that, like right out of the school, that was it. And I'm thinking, man, this thing is easy. Of course, there was a lot of work that went into that.
And was that your first really big road gig?
That was my first road gig. And what's amazing is our very first show, so me as a professional side guy or whatever, the very first show was in the very same place when I was 8 years old, playing in front of those girls. Exactly. So of all the thousands of venues it could have been, it was that one. So I'm like, that's very... I guess serendipitous.
It's serendipitous, yeah. Kismet, whatever word you want to do.
So after Wilkinsons was, while I was with the Wilkinsons, I was working on Pinmonkey, and we were recording and doing as much as we could, literally in my parents' bonus room. My dad had gotten a 1680, a VS16, the hard disk recorder.
Right.
We were just recording a bunch of songs, which eventually turned into Speak No Evil, which was our first independent. And while we were finishing that is when we got the record deal with RCA. So we're actually in the studio with Paul Worley making our first RCA album while we're finishing the other one. And, everything was kind of crazy in that moment. We were on the rocket ship there.
And then you had your single. And as I said in the beginning, reaching number 25 on the charts is no small feat in itself, especially as crowded as the charts can be. Was that a surprise for you?
Well, I mean, we were wanting it to go more.
Yeah.
We felt the energy, and we felt the RCA team, the B&A, which was the label that we were on, part of RCA, the staff was just amazing, and they were so amped up. This is before the Dixie Chicks came out with, I think it's Home, which is more of their bluegrass album.
Yeah.
Our band, is kind of bluegrass harmonies, and, I'm playing the dobro, but it's with a Rolling Stone backbeat in terms of, the drums and bass and everything. But people kept saying, man, you guys are great, but you're just too bluegrass for country. And I'm like, okay. And then literally like 6 months later, Home comes out, and everyone's like, oh, this is the best thing ever. So just a little bit of timing, but we had a blast. It was a great experience. It was really fun. And it definitely opened the doors for a lot of other things for me in my career.
I think Pinmonkey was just maybe ahead of its time, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You went on to performed with some great artists. I read the list of some of them. I'm sure you've worked with more, but let's talk just for a minute about Live 8. I'm kind of dating myself. I remember when the first one came out. What was that all about?
I was with Keith Urban at the time, and it was in Philadelphia. So Live 8, there was basically different stages throughout the world. And in the U.S., it was Philadelphia. It was Maroon 5, Keith, and Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
That's like, all right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And 100,000 of your closest friends in the stadium.
Oh, there was more than that. They estimated at 1 million. It was actually on the streets of Philadelphia.
Oh, it was? Okay.
So
yeah.
I didn't recognize the magnitude until we came back to the stage because we performed. They shuttled us off back to our hotel. We watched a little bit of Stevie Wonder, then they shuttled us off until the crowd dispersed. So we came back to our bus around, I don't know, it's around 2 a.m. or so. And when we came back is when we all, I think, really recognized the magnitude of it because we were like blocks and blocks and blocks away. And you'd see like a screen and a bunch of speakers and then just trash everywhere. And then we keep going, another screen, speakers, trash, keep going, another screen. And like it was just, delayed speakers and screen setup just as far as you could see. And
wow.
So anyway, Google says it's 1.5 million, but who knows?
Hey, nothing wrong with that. You also went on to perform on the Grammys, CMAs, AMAs. Is that also with Keith and other
That's
artists?
with everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah.
How did you get into that world? Because that's kind of a sweet spot that I know a lot of, especially musicians that want to tour. Because there is a difference between the session player that goes into the studio,
right,
who basically gets paid to do, their 1, 2, or 3 sessions and call it a day, versus the guy that's going to go out on the road for 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get that first gig? Who was it, first of all, past the Wilkinsons, and how did you get it?
When I got signed to RCA, when Pinmonkey did, I called my mentor, which is Jimmy Olander, the guitar player for Diamond Rio. And he's been my mentor ever since, maybe 99, since the Wilkinsons. I said, hey, man, we got signed to RCA, which actually he was signed to also Arista, so part of the same group. And he said, awesome, cool, great. And I'm like, what do I do now? Because so many times people were like, their goal is just to get signed, especially back in, the 90s. And he said, all right, man, you need to start songwriting. I said, all right. And so the label and other people started to help, getting me hooked up with other writers and things like that. And one of those writers was one of my dream writing gigs ever would be Wayne Kirkpatrick.
Right.
And so Wayne and I started writing quite a bit together. And we would do, we wrote in a studio. And so after we would write a song, we'd go and just do a guitar vocal and we'd do it to a click. And those songs that kind of came to the top of some of the better stuff that we were writing, he would bring in a band. And at the time he was working with Little Big Town. A lot of times they would sing on my demos, which is pretty cool.
That is
and,
very cool.
Some of the musicians was, like the Jimmy Lee Sloas and Mark Childers and Chris McHugh. And so on this particular one, Chris McHugh was in there, and who's a phenomenal drummer here in Nashville. He said, hey, who's that playing Dobro? Because I'd played Dobro on a demo. And Wayne said, oh, well, that's the co-writer. That's Chad Jeffers. And he goes, oh, my gosh, I need his number. Keith, right now we're putting together a new band. We need a slide player like that. Soon after, Mark Hill called me from Keith's camp, who was the music director, and that's what started it. And Mark said, hey, can you come over and I need to just hear you a little bit. And that was it.
In the studio with us today, Chad Jeffers.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics, all written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Hi, this is Tom Sabella, the creator, founder, and co-producer of the Business Side of Music podcast. It's loyal listeners such as yourself that make our podcast successful. Take the time to sign up for our weekly newsletter. Not only does it contain information on upcoming podcast episodes, but also informative tidbits on the music industry and even bonus items that we give away. All you have to do is sign up at businesssideofmusic.com and we will send you Larry Butler's new singer-songwriter rulebook. That's it. All you have to do is go to businesssideofmusic.com, sign up, and we will send you Larry Butler's new book. Thanks to all our loyal listeners. We love you.
You're listening to the business side of music.
In the studio with us today, Chad Jeffers. So, in a way, you started out as kind of that session player, demo player, and that got you on the road. How long were you out with Keith?
It was supposed to be just one tour, and it turned into about a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And which was a lot of fun.
And you've been all over. In your bio, you say from Afghanistan to Japan. Is there a favorite place you loved performing at, a favorite country, favorite city? Is there one that sticks out more than another? Or?
I always love Australia.
Yeah.
Australia is always great. The Japan one was pretty cool. It was Kumamoto, and there's a big country festival over there 2 times a year, and it's set up on this huge
country
mountain.
festival in Japan.
In Japan,
Yeah.
A guy named Charlie Nagatani puts it on. Charlie Nagatani and his Cannonballs is his band, and he has a club there in Kumamoto called Good Time Charlie. And you walk in, you feel like you're in southern Alabama. I mean, it's like dusty and hats hanging everywhere, and it's crazy. I think for me, touring different places, they all have a different charm to it. Some of the places like in Afghanistan and Iraq, playing in front of our servicemen and women, that was crazy powerful. I went over there twice. It was amazing. We slept in Saddam's palace, and it was pretty amazing.
I got to tell you, as the dad of military kids and have heard their stories, when you go over there and you do that, you make such an impact on them. To them, it feels like it's just a little bit of home that has been brought to them. And they may not be necessarily fans of your music. By the end of the day, they're now your biggest fans. And so thank you for doing that. So
it's my pleasure.
appreciate your support there. You also worked with Kenny Loggins. I got the chance to work with Kenny, 8 or 9 years ago. Great guy. Was Kenny doing full tour at that time, a full band? Or
So he did an album, and there was a lot of slide work on it. His longtime guitar player, Chris Rodriguez, he asked Chris, Raj as we call him, he said, "Hey man, I'm looking for a slide player for this tour because this album that we're supporting has tons of slide on it." And, Raj says, "You need to call my buddy Chad." And so the funny story about that is Kenny called me, and this is, I still had a landline. He called me up, and keep in mind, some of my buddies, we played jokes on each other.
Right.
And especially when someone doesn't answer, you're like, "Hey, Danny, this is Paul McCartney, because you're not answering your phone, I guess you're not going to be in my band." Just stupid stuff.
Right.
So anyway, so Kenny calls me, and he said, "Hey," and he's distracted about something. He's like, "Hey, I'm looking for, is Chad around?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is him." He goes, "Hey, this is Kenny Loggins." I'm like, "Danny, is this you?" He's like, no, it's Kenny Loggins. And I could hear the timbre in his voice. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, okay." I'm like, "Wow, yeah, what do you need? And he said, Chris Rodriguez says, you're the guy, so you're the guy. Can you be in LA in, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, ready to go?" And I'm like, "Of course, sign me up." So they sent me the music, and I was able to go out there and rehearse and just on the track.
That's not the first time we've heard a story like that. We had bassist Bill Sinkay on the show a while back, who went on to become Neil Diamond's bassist. And he said it was the exact same thing. He got home, he'd had a really rough day, he was just kind of worn out. The phone rang, and he picked it up, and it was Neil Diamond's manager. And he said, "Hey, we need you to come into the studio tomorrow." And Bill's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And, he's getting ready to hang up. And the guy goes, No, seriously, this is Neil Diamond's manager. And of course, it worked out, and he went on the road. But it's more times than not, you get that phone call out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And you're right, because, that's a lot of times in our business, kind of our brotherhood and sisterhood, we will play the practical jokes, but when you get that phone call and it's serious, it really just, first of all, kind of gets the heart pumping a little bit and the adrenaline flowing, and you get a chance to get out on the road. Carrie Underwood, how did that gig come along? Because now you're with like a really true superstar.
Yeah.
And nothing against Kenny or Keith Urban. They're all great in their own. Yeah. But, Carrie kind of elevates it to another level.
So it goes back to the Keith Urban gig. We were doing what we call a dust bowl. So we were like in a racetrack area, And it was like sometime in like July and no rain forever. And so it was just dusty all over. And, the stage is set up in the middle of the racetrack. And I remember it very vividly like that. And after the show, the opening act, the band came over and hung out with us on the bus. I was sitting next to the bass player, and, we're just, sharing war stories like we do. And right before they left, I just, the gig was awesome with Keith and everything, but I just thought, hey, you live in the same area as me, and, I know you have a studio. Hey, if you ever need anything, just give me a shout. And I just wrote down my number and gave it to him. That was it.
But that's how you do it.
Right. And I did it completely just, hey, if you ever need anything. It wasn't, hey, you got to hear my stuff. It was just, if you need anything, give me a shout. I went on with Keith. We were over in Germany somewhere. This is before cell phones were working over there too. We were at the airport, and I was just checking my messages on a landline, and it was Mark, this guy, the bass player. And he said, hey, man, we're about to do David Letterman. Can you come and join us for this? And I'm like, there's no way. I mean, we're in Germany, headed to wherever. And so I called him back from the landline there in the Germany airport, and I said, hey, man, I got your message. And, I'm so sorry, but we're on the tour right now and I can't do it. But just want to let you know, I appreciate the call. That was it.
Right.
Little did I know that was something that was very impressionable. Impressionable?
Impressive?
Impressionable.
Yeah. Okay.
There it is. That kind of stuck with him because, years later, I was walking into a writing session. I was writing on Music Row. I get a phone call. It's this guy, Mark. He goes, hey, my name's Mark Childers, and you probably don't remember me, but, and I'm like, yeah, of course I remember you. And he said, hey, I'm with Carrie Underwood, and I'm her music director now, and we're looking for a slide player. Can you do it? And I said, yeah. He goes, great. This is at 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, can you meet management at 3 o'clock today? And I'm like, I'm in jeans and a t-shirt, and I don't have my slide guitar or anything. He goes, no. They just want to talk to you. And that was it. Went with that afternoon, right after my writing session, and met with them, and that was it. Here we are 12, 13 years later.
Once again, it's those moments that you really got to take advantage of. When I was road managing, I remember getting a phone call at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they saying, are you available? And I'd say, well, yeah, when do I leave? And they go, oh, you're on a red eye tonight, to start the tour. So you've got to take those opportunities when they come. And I also agree with you, is always return a phone call. Even if it's a no, I can't do it, people will appreciate that more than anything. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about your book. And then I want to talk about your course that you have written also in your public speaking. In the studio with us today, Chad Jeffers.
Hey, everybody. This is Bill Sinkay, taking over music one living room at a time. You're listening to the business side of music. I'm listening as well.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Spire Boot Camps is happening at iconic OmniSound Studios in Nashville on March 20th through 22nd. This is a 3-day intensive boot camp for music artists who will receive training from renowned experts such as legendary drummer-speaker Sandy Gennaro, songwriter Benita Hill, vocal coach Robin Earl, producer-songwriter Gary Earl, and business life coach Anita Hodges. Topics will include navigating the music business, songwriting, vocal coaching, producing, music syncs, and more. Go to www.spirebootcamps.com. That's spirebootcamps.com.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site. Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Chad Jeffers is on the show today. 2008, you became an author with your first book, Notes for the Successful Musician, which also led to a speaking career. The book, what was the motivation for writing that?
Well, the book is 25 Notes for the Successful Musician. You know, the motivation behind that was I kept getting so many questions of, hey, man, how'd you get a gig with Keith Urban or Carrie Underwood or Kenny Loggins, or how'd you get signed to RCA? And kind of the stuff we've been talking about here. It was just like a buddy of mine, Dan Miller, who's a best-selling author here in the Franklin area. He said, man, he goes, why don't you write a book and just capture kind of all your thoughts and just put it on paper and, to help people, through this process. And that's pretty much what it was. I just started taking more notes, like on the road of, some of the smart things and some of the dumb things that people do, me doing the dumb things.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't do that again. Don't do that. Note number 1.
Kind of a face palm. Dang, I did it again.
Yeah. But, I talked about, what it's like before we go on to a show or, like an arena show or an awards show, different things like that, just to put, things in to let people kind of see the backstage of things a little bit.
The proper perspective of it all.
Yeah, and it's not just the glamour and the whole, lights and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of, it's the hard work.
It is. There's a lot that goes into it. And the 25 notes for the successful musician, how long did it take you to put that together? Once you started putting your notes together, did it come together pretty quickly?
It did, once I got the notes together.
Yeah.
But honestly, there was a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm thinking, am I really qualified? And, I talked to my mentor, Jimmy Olander, a lot, and he goes, man, if you can't do it, who else could, And I'm like, okay. So, there was definitely those thoughts.
I mean, how long were you on the road all together, from the Wilkinsons up to
20 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's 20 years of knowledge and experience and nothing against going to college. I think it's great.
Yeah.
But the practical education is in what we call those street smarts. It's being on the road. And as you said, it's finding out, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. I think for every time you fail, you've got to find another way to succeed. And we all fail in this business. If it was that easy, everybody would be doing it, as we know. But the book digs into a little bit of just helping people make the right choices, right decisions, or...
Yeah, it's all of that. About a year and a half ago, someone said, hey, when are you going to write the other book, the next book? And I said, I started looking into it and I thought, well, more people are consuming more video now. And so then that's when BackStage Notes came to be, because I thought, why not put all this in more of a video series?
And that's an online course.
It is an online course. I know I'm probably getting a little bit ahead, but, I was an adjunct at Belmont University. And so there's a course that I actually created for them. So a lot of my BackStage Notes is actually what I was talking about in that college course. So,
yeah.
And it's been really helpful to a lot of people to basically be performance ready, whether that's in a writing room, whether that's in the studio or on a stage, or if that's even in like a boardroom or giving a presentation. They all have the same components.
And we talked about that before the show, that it doesn't matter what that platform is, as you said, whether it's a boardroom or it's part of Live 8 on a huge stage in front of hundreds of thousands or a million people. It's that kind of the 6 Ps that we've always said, which is prior, proper, planning prevents piss poor performance. I think I said that right. But I mean, it's really getting yourself together and making sure that, because when you step out on that stage, there's no do-overs,
Right.
Your first impression is it.
Mm-hmm.
And is this something that helps cover that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it helps navigate through all that. And so the question in the last, probably the last 10 years has been, with Carrie, is like, how do you guys put on this magnitude of a show?
Right.
I mean, because the last couple of tours have been in the round. So the stage literally goes the full length of the arena, it's just massive. And people are like, how do you even start with something like that? And so, I talk about those things. I talk with a show producer that we talk about, how do you put on a show? How can you, as a songwriter or as a just an artist getting started, working on your live show in a, just a small little bar or whatever. I mean, because on whatever level, there's things that you can do right now that can help improve your stage show.
Going on stage and enjoying yourself and having a good time, because if you look like you're having a good time, obviously you are. And then the audience, they're not all looking at Carrie Underwood.
Right.
I mean, they are, but they're looking at the other players that are on the stage and seeing what you guys are doing. And so you have to have your act together.
Yeah.
Is that something that for you, did it just come naturally, or is it something you had to work out? Because, I remember you saying in the beginning you were chased by 1,500 rainbow girls, but, now you're playing on stages, with tens of thousands of people in the audience. Is there a difference there for you?
There is, yes and no. In terms of being like a side guy with an artist, Your job is to, of course, the music part and to deliver, your instrument and everything. But the other part of that is you're there to support the artist. So whatever the artist is doing, you're there to support he or she.
Yeah.
That's your job, whatever that may mean. That can go in a lot of different directions.
Is there a set choreography every night? I mean, I know you have a set list of these are the songs that we're going to do, but do you have a set choreography that, you're going to be at a certain place in a certain song that's well rehearsed, or is there any spontaneity? Is it both? Or
It's both, but there's definitely, on pretty much any of these larger tours with a lot of, lights and audio and staging and things like that, there's always choreography and not choreography. People think dancing as soon as you hear it, but choreography just in terms of where you need to be, because there's,
so you don't miss a lighting cue.
Stage blocking. Yeah. So it's all about that. And also if they're trying to create a certain moment of a certain song, like, on Carrie on this last tour, Cry Pretty Tour 360, there was a bit where I'm playing saxophone. Crazy. That's a whole different story. And so it was me playing sax, Mark, our bass player, playing upright bass, which will normally, he's playing electric. And then she's on like a Chase Lounge, it's like more of a jazz kind of club, is what they tried to make.
Smoky Lounge.
Or what they did make. Yeah. And so, for us, that was definitely a choreography thing of like, okay, I am on the complete opposite stage, the song before. So how can I get to my saxophone and get to that point? And so that's what all of, rehearsals is all about, is working out those, just that process.
Let's talk about saxophones for a minute. Now that that's coming into the picture, when did you start playing sax?
In sixth grade. And so I, outside of, playing in bands in our family band, and, that was on the weekends,
Because you don't mention this in your bio notes.
I know. Sorry about that. I played saxophone just in the high school or in the grade school band, and then eventually high school.
Right.
It was just another instrument to me. And as I got closer to graduating high school, my mom, especially my mom, was saying, hey, why don't you go see if you can get a scholarship on saxophone? And I'm like, okay. So, so I did. And I got some scholarships, like full rides to like state schools, but I wanted to go to Belmont because I want to be a guitar player. That's what chicks dig, guitar players. So when I went to Belmont, I pretty much literally shelved the sax. Well, little did I know, 20 years later, Mark, our music director, would be sending out a group text to all of us saying, hey, I know this is a long shot, but does anybody in the band play saxophone?
Wow.
And I'm like, I kind of do. And he was like, how do you kind of? Like, well, I played it back in high school, but, and what I love about Nashville is there's great companies around here that really support musicians. So Jupiter Band Instruments helped me out and got a saxophone for me, and Diodario helped me out with my mouthpiece and reeds and all the other stuff. And they just literally, and they're asking me all these tech questions about this, what size of reed or what kind of mouthpiece. I'm like, I don't know. Just if you can put it together and let's see if this thing, if I can actually do it. And sure enough, it kind of came back to me like, riding a bicycle. And
how long did it take you to kind of get to that level where like, I can actually do this?
I had about a week.
A week.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then because we were already in rehearsals when I got the sax. And so it was a lot of late nights and just kind of figuring it out. And also playing sax like a saxophone player, not like a guitar player.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to be more of the saxophone player. And so once again with Nashville, it's awesome because I had a couple of guys help me out in terms of, just saying, yeah, man, you are playing it like a guitar player. Play it like this, and so I had a lot of instruction. Which, I think is paramount to any musician, to have good people around you and help you out as you go along. So anyway, it turned out to be one of my favorite moments of the stage or of the show was playing sax and doing that. And so it wasn't just playing the song. They said, hey, can you do like 20 seconds just by yourself? I'm like, okay.
On saxophone.
And so
sure, no problem.
Yeah, what else do you want me to do?
I can juggle.
Yeah. So during the show, like all the lights would go off, and then they just had a light on me, and then I would play. And then to add to the story, they said, can you go ahead and walk down? We call it the monorail. And so it's this kind of a rail that went out the way the stage was shaped in the I form. Mm-hmm. And so this is kind of like the bottom part of the I. And the stage is 10 feet off the ground. So I'm walking in the dark with my sax playing, trying to get to the next point for the lighting cue. And so I'm like, yeah, but Anyway, it all worked out. No one fell off the stage, thank goodness.
No one was killed in the process, as we like to say around here.
And that's one thing I talk about in my talks is, to have a can-do attitude. So much about this business is just saying, sure, let me give it a shot. The last tour was harmonica for me. Once again, the music director called me and said, hey, do you play harmonica? And I'm like, sure. I'm shaking my head, no.
Yeah.
And so there was a harmonica part. So I started learning it and spent about a month on that. And then he called and he said, well, I think Carrie wants to play too. And I'm like, so did I waste the month? He goes, no, you guys do something together. Which actually turned out to be another one of my favorite moments of the Storyteller tour, where she and I are just in the middle and we're doing like a dueling harmonica part. It was so much fun. It was great.
How is she to work with?
She's awesome.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be with her still.
Yeah.
But no, she's great. What I love about the gig is it's just very professional. So you're expected to show up on time, if not early, which a lot of times on time means you're already late.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that aspect of it. And, just her as a singer and an entertainer, she's a powerhouse. Throughout my career, I've had such a fortunate, it's been so amazing to be playing with so great of artists, vocally especially. From Keith to the Wilkinsons. Amy Wilkinson is awesome, to Jamie O'Neill, to Kenny, and of course Carrie. They're amazing. And as a slide player, let me just side note, as a slide player, it makes it so much easier on my life when they're in tune. Because if they're out of tune and I'm in tune, people are looking at me like, yeah, you're out of tune,
It's your fault.
It's your fault, yeah.
How can people, first of all, find your book?
BackStageNotes.com is where you can find that, and as well as the course. For me, I'm on all socials. Also for the speaking, you can find me anywhere at Chad Jeffers.
How often are you out speaking on the circuit?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Trying to do more, and speaking at universities, and from time to time I still go back to Belmont and guest speak, and do seminars. And yeah, I'm just having a great time doing it. People a lot of times they can say, why the speaking? You're a musician. You're playing in front of thousands of people. For me, it's the giving back. Whenever I talk about something and I see people light up, it's that rush. I'm like, oh, this is, it's a different purpose. It's another purpose in my life that I'm really grabbing onto and really paying attention to.
Chad, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.